Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal.
Trauma, the real deal. I talk with someone who completely validated what I've learned after years of supporting my husband with complex PTSD. The biggest breakthroughs in healing relationships and releasing shame don't always have to come from only talk therapy. That you can approach healing in ways that may feel a little bit more woo woo or surprisingly simple. And as a pharmacist, I've spent most of my life immersed in the world of Western medicine. And so for me, stepping outside this world of traditional therapy was kind of a shift. But after deep diving into how complex trauma healing is, it completely transformed how I view this. And I realized that trauma recovery doesn't fit neatly in a box. And having a new perspective reshaped how I could better support my husband and just view healing, trauma healing as a whole. And if you've ever wondered if there's more that you can do, this episode is definitely for you. Now, I sat down with Cassandra Love Lambert, and she is the visionary behind Sea Love and is a trauma trained somatic transformational coach, an author, as also a TV host and artist. She is fully certified in clinical EFT, brain spotting, and somatic attachment therapy. Cassandra is a beacon of hope and transformation for women seeking healing and empowerment. Having faced her own battles with complex PTSD from sexual abuse and the challenges of an emotionally unavailable parent, Cassandra's journey to self-love and wholeness has deeply informed her practice. Her experiences have led her to the life-changing power of somatic-based work, particularly emotional freedom techniques, EFT. And her mission is to guide clients to feel safe in their bodies, fully experience their emotions, and unlock their authentic selves, enabling them to show up in their lives and thrive. Cassandra is also recently promoting her upcoming book, Into the Light, Becoming My Own Hero. And that is set for release. And she also has an inspiring new show, Into the Light with Sea Love, inspiring stories that shape your path to change. So with that, I would love to get into Cassandra's story and a lot more about how she has looked outside of the box of just traditional talk therapy to really heal and deal with all of the emotions that are deep down inside. Much for chatting with me today, Cassandra. I am so excited. And I cannot wait to hear more about all of the things that you are doing for trauma healing. But I would love to start with, how did your journey start in trauma healing?
Oh my gosh, that's such a long story, Danielle, and it's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Oh, it actually started in childhood by going through trauma. As early as two, being put into foster care because my mom was in an abusive relationship and with an alcoholic, and they were arguing. And the story I was told, because this part I don't like remember, is that she moved me out of the way and I hit the corner of a coffee table and got a black eye. And so that gentleman and my mom had had a baby. So this is a half sister for me. And that gentleman's mom didn't like my mom, so she called CPS. So CPS came and got me at 2, took me away from my mom, put me in some strange person's house. And I used to have a lot of nightmares and pee the bed remembering that experience. But whenever I go in therapy or whatever and recall it, I only get like little snapshots of moments. And then while my mom was trying to get me back from CPS and foster care, that man and his mom filed for custody of my little sister, and we have not seen her since. So that was traumatic at too, right? And then you like fast forward a little bit. My mom ended up with another man, and at first it seemed really great, right? Because we got to move from a tiny one bedroom in this house with multiple people to like a huge three-story house in SF. So it seemed like our life was getting better. He was taking us to like all the nice restaurants, and he was like a business guy of some kind because he would take me on meetings and I'd meet a lot of like fancy people. That's how I remember it, right? The fancy people, because just, everything was just different and luxury. And I guess I picked up on that because I was very observant. However, he ended up losing his job, and we ended up leaving that three-story house and ended up in this tiny little rundown apartment on San Bruno Avenue, close to SF airport. And my mom was the one working, so he was at home with me. And I remember this is when I became aware that they were fighting. Before then, I didn't know. They might have, they might not have. But three-story house, obviously, they were keeping it like, kind of enclosed quarters. But in this tiny apartment, I overheard it. I looked out, and my mom was pregnant with another sister of mine. This is the sister I've grown up with. And he kicked my mom in her pregnant belly, and she went flying across the floor and landed in the wicker chair. I can't unsee this moment ever. And then she went in the bathroom, and it was the first time I had ever seen her cry. And I think that's also why it like just etched into my soul so much, because that was profound for me as a little one. And a little bit after that is when he started to sexually abuse me. And it was consistent. And it was my mom was at work, like it'd be after school. He would do things to me, make me do things to him. And this went on for 3 years till I was 8 when my mom finally left him. And you would think that that's enough trauma for anyone, right? And it is. However, then I also had to deal with the custody battle of my little sister and how he had started doing it to her. And I was really scared to tell. And then just going through the whole justice system that didn't really give justice. And I talk about this in my book, actually. And I go really deep into the details of like how I felt like I was wrong for telling the truth finally because of how long my sister still had to go have visitation with him, and we couldn't do anything about it. Even though we did the police reports and they were investigating, they still allowed my little sister to go be with this man who was an abuser and a molester. And so as you keep going, I'm getting older. My mom got married to someone she had known since childhood, and I thought my life was getting better. However, that also kind of flopped at one point, and my mom was going through a lot of pain. She took it out on me. I became the scapegoat. And she kind of became narcissistic in personality in a lot of ways. Like it was always competition. I was always blamed for everything, criticized, picked apart. And I always used to think that the worst trauma was the sexual abuse, and it is in certain ways. But I think the like negligence of love and care and affection from my mom actually cut deeper because I have found that with trauma, I used to think I was dating the molester, but what I realized is I was actually dating my mom over and over, trying to work out that trauma with her, trying to get love from someone who was emotionally unavailable and would like call me you're too sensitive. Oh, you just need to get over it. She would put porn on and tell me like, oh, this is just life. You need to just deal with it. Knowing that I had strong reactions to that because of the trauma. So all of that, right? And then seeing all her abusive relationships, I actually ended up in lots of abusive relationships because that's how it goes, right? Patterns are patterns. And it was really hard. However, I remember sitting at night on bed and Tony Robbins came on. And this is so funny because it was an infomercial back in the day when they did all those
Yeah.
infomercials, right? And something about whatever he was saying struck a chord, and so I got his book. I still have it actually, that particular book, and like it kind of opened a door for me. And then I got into this Meisner acting class, which is all about human behavior and being in the moment. And in that class, I actually thawed out because before then I was kind of robotic in a lot of ways, just on autopilot, kind of checked out, disassociated. And in this class, I landed back in my body. And that teacher called me out. She's like, if you don't go to therapy, I can't work with you anymore. And she did that in front of the whole class. And it was because this class is all about being in the moment, being authentic, and working off of your partner in real time. And she said I had the most intricate defense mechanism system she had ever seen in her life because it was like, you would say something to me, right? And then I would like take it in, internalize it, play with it, like mold it, whatever, send back what I thought you wanted me to say, right? Because of all the abuse and the trauma. So then I got on a whole trajectory of nonstop personal development, PSI seminars. I worked with Reiki masters, shamans, medicine circles, all this stuff. And I thought I had done a pretty good job until I got pregnant in my at 29, and I had postpartum, but also everything I thought I had healed came surfacing back to this came right back up as if I hadn't done any work at all, meaning none of the roots had actually transformed. And it was really overwhelming and scary. So after trying so many things, I was kind of in a dark night of the soul type of moment. And I was like, well, I haven't tried Creator. I haven't tried God. I was like, and then when I like thought about that, I was angry at God because like if there is a God, why did you let me, especially so little, go through all these things? Like I felt forgotten, not cared for. So I had to work through that. And it's a very mystical process and sacred. It's different for everyone. However, the more I took a step toward, this higher power, um, things began to reveal themselves on my path, like one next step at a time. And I was led to somatic work, and the first modality was EFT tapping. And it was like one of those moments of like, oh, wow, this is the thing that I can help other people with. Like, because I could feel a physiological and biological shift within myself. And well, whatever it was, I knew I had to like do more of it. So I got certified. And then as things started to shift and the change stayed, there was this moment of like, it's just gonna come back. It's just gonna come back. And then it didn't. So then I was like convicted. Oh yeah, I have to help people with this. And when my daughter was born, I actually became an artist. I was trying to figure out my life, and the idea to do face and body art came through. And I asked someone, they said, yeah. So I was super pregnant, went in the back of nightclubs, had a sign, sit down, say hi, become art. Like I hand wrote these signs, and people would do it, and they would rub my belly for good luck. And that was a great business. It really helped me establish myself as a single mom and move out of my mom's house so we had a little bit of freedom and distance. However, the pandemic happened just as my certification was ending, and that's where I became a somatic practitioner, helping other women unpack their trauma and really get empowered. So I was
Mm.
guided the whole way through this process of trauma.
Wow.
Mhm.
Oh, Cassandra, I can't imagine that childhood.
That's in a nutshell,
Oh,
right? It's so like so much.
yeah.
We like condense it. Yeah.
Can we go back to when you were pregnant and
Mhm.
you thought you'd done all this work,
Yeah.
and what did that feel like for you? How did it come back essentially? What did it feel like?
I now have words that I didn't have then. Okay. Because when I was in it, I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was losing my mind. But like I was like super like I loved my daughter, but I had a really hard time connecting with her, and like I would feel like the grief and sadness because of being a single mom. It wasn't what I ever wanted to be, and how like the relationship with me and her dad had went. So, um, like that made me then judge myself more, and then my mom was judging me, and then just overly sensitive, like just flooded with anxiousness, fear, doubt. It was really scary. I didn't know how to feel safe. I didn't know how to feel confident in being able to protect my daughter. Because like one of my biggest fears was birthed with her, which was like, I don't want what happened to me to happen to her, and I don't know how to prevent that in a world where there's lots of these people hurting kids.
Did it feel like it? And that's exactly why I asked you that question, is
Mhm.
because I love being able to work and talk with people who have done the work and can put words to things. Because I think that a lot of people may be feeling similar things and not able to identify that in themselves. And so thank you for sharing that. Did you feel like you were being, I don't know if you like the word triggered, but
Oh,
that,
yes, all the time. Yes,
yeah,
constant triggered, activated. What I would say the word is like past my ability to handle it. So it's past my threshold and capacity. And before now, like I know this language now, so back then it was just what you call overwhelm. Like it's just all so overwhelming, too much to deal with, don't know what to do with it. So you might shut down or try to shut down, but that doesn't work, or you might disassociate, check out of your body, or some people might cope in unhealthy ways like alcohol or drugs. But yeah, it's just because it's just so much in your system that it has you on edge for everything. Nothing feels safe.
yeah. And then the coping mechanisms that you developed as you were a kid, now you're a mom
Can't use those anymore,
and you
right?
can't use those same techniques anymore. I can't imagine.
Yeah, when you say that too, though, I was so at capacity because of all the triggers and the sensitivity that when she would like have a tantrum or scream or it was just too much, I couldn't handle it. And that's when I had a like realization. I was like, oh, this is a moment some parents abuse their kids. Like I just
Yeah.
knew like that was the moment some parents abuse their kids because maybe they're at capacity and they don't know what to do. And then that little thing just kind of pushes them over. And because they don't know how to regulate themselves, how are they going to attend to this child that's also dysregulated?
Yes. And you can easily see how it has a generational impact
100%. Yeah.
if you
But there
don't do
were
the
lots of those
work.
moments too. And then there were also lots of moments with my daughter where I was just like, how can my mom do that to me? Like I would never do that to her. Like what the hell?
Yeah.
Like so then I was just like, "Oh my God, this is
Oh,
traumatizing," right? Like I was like, I know that's not right because I love her too much. I could never do or say the things, some of the things
yeah.
my mom said to me or did to me.
Just a huge storm of emotions.
Mhm.
I can only imagine. And so you tried all, it sounds like you were just in this realm of trying anything, right?
Yes.
To to get
Pretty much.
help to heal.
Hmm.
And I think you mentioned somewhere that you described the pain of feeling re-traumatized by
Hmm.
some of the healing methods that you
Oh, yeah.
try. Can
Yes.
you describe that for me?
There's a lot of people out there who do really weird sexual healing things. But really, it just feels like they're perpetrators and trying to put it in the package of sexual healing. So I bumped into some of those kind of experiences as well, where they're actually like attempting to touch you, but then like have you say no or yes, or it's just this really interesting stuff that I was like, oh, that's actually more traumatizing than healing, right? There's just a lot of things out there that could be more harmful than helpful.
what would you say to people that have tried a bunch of things and it just didn't feel right? It didn't connect with them. If you were talking to somebody, what would you say? Because I want people to be able to get the healing that they need. And I think that sometimes it is a trial and error. I don't know
Mhm.
how you feel.
It is definitely a trial and error because we're all unique, like snowflakes. And it's like trying to figure out that combination lock, right? To unlock yourself. But there's some key things for anybody.
Banging your head against the wall trying to navigate the complexities of a relationship impacted by childhood trauma, it doesn't have to be this daunting. When you're married to a partner with unresolved childhood trauma, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what will set them off. No matter what you try, it feels like there's always something triggering another emotional response that seems completely out of context. And the harder you try to fix it, the more discouraged you feel. So, what's the issue here? Navigating marriage with a trauma survivor is different. The love languages don't work. Date nights don't work. Self-help books don't help. But here's the good news. I've created something that does work. Something built from years of hard-earned lessons and real-life experience. Ready to take the first step toward real change? Let's talk. I'm offering a free one-on-one call where we'll dive into what's going on in your relationship and figure out a way forward together. This isn't just another quick chat. It's a chance to finally be heard, to share what you're going through with someone who truly gets it. No judgment, just real support. So if you're ready to start making sense of it all and find a little more peace in your marriage, book your free call now. Your happiness, your peace, and your relationship are worth it. Let's do it together.
Things is our system, especially because of going through abuse or trauma, our system really craves consistency and routine, and that helps it feel safe. So one of the things you need to implement is a daily practice. And I like to guide people to doing a daily practice where they include all sides of their being so that they're more whole and balanced. So you have like, your mental, your physical, your emotional, your spiritual sides. So I like to guide them to do, definitely tapping, EFT tapping, because it helps regulate their nervous system and emotions. It helps click on your vagus nerve and reduce cortisol. Meditation, some kind of stillness practice, so you can ground, protect your energy, clear out the world and everybody else's stuff, and really tune back into your essence. Some kind of physical activity. It doesn't have to be, I'm trying to be bodybuilder or anything. It could be walk around the block, right? But some kind of physical activity. And then the final piece I like to guide people to is something for their spirit, and everybody's different, right? So that might be doing art or listening to music or being in nature or being with pets. But like you want to hit each of these sides of your being so you have a little bit more balance in your life. And then the next piece, I would say is somatic work. You have to do some kind, like you can have your talk, old traditional talk therapist, whatever. They're great for some things. Everybody's going to have to do some somatic work at some point because trauma lives in your body and your nervous system and your organs. And you really have to feel your way through it in a safe container, being held by a practitioner who's skilled with trauma to really release it from your system. Um, and if a memory is processed, a traumatic moment is processed when you think of it and you're not like in it and it's not living in your body. And when you think of it, it kind of has distance to it. Then you know that you've actually worked through whatever that traumatic moment or experience is.
I love what you just described because I think that a lot of people feel like trauma healing has to be what you just said, the counseling, the going to somebody
Yeah.
and talking about it. And there are so many components that can help you regulate, and I use that word,
Mhm.
the and help you regulate and deal with your emotions that you can do on your own.
Mhm. Yeah.
That I love. I love that idea because I think that sometimes people have had a bad experience with the talk therapy.
Mhm.
And there it doesn't always have to include that, not necessarily.
Yeah, no, I actually have gotten a lot of clients who they came to me because they're tired of therapy, not helping them move forward, feeling stuck in the same place. They're tired of talking about the same things over and over again and it not changing. And they really love that I gave them things they could use on their own, in their day to day. Because the truth is, like, talking about things don't change things, right? And thinking about something isn't going to make you feel differently about it. You have to feel your way through it. And you're not going to have your therapist in your pocket every day. So you need something you can do on your own to support you to get through your day with more ease and grace.
I also love the somatic part. I 100% agree with you that that is one of the keys. And that
100.
is a wonderful segue to where I think that that somatic uh, piece of what you just described can be so helpful in
Mhm.
relationships.
Oh, yes, 100%. Yeah.
Because my experience being married to someone who suffered severe childhood trauma, and I don't mean it doesn't have to be severe, any childhood trauma, your coping mechanisms that you develop can end up not being that helpful in adult
Mhm.
relationships. But the responses that I saw in my husband were literally bodily, physical, no way for him to put words to it,
Mhm. Yep.
just came out of nowhere. And there was really, unless he did a lot of, until he did somatic work, it didn't get
Yeah.
any better.
Oh, yeah.
So talk to me
Yeah,
about
it
that.
won't because it's like living in your body. So
Yep.
that's the really good book for that is The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read
Yes.
it, you definitely have to read it, right?
Yes. I have. It's the
Right.
Bible. It's the
Oh, it is,
Bible.
yeah. But yeah, that stuff will live in your body your whole life until you actually release it. And the only way I've found to release it is the somatic work. Like there's no shortcuts here. There's no magic wand. And there's a lot of different somatic practices. Also, when you're dealing with like trauma or traumatic events, you want to work with a practitioner. Like using somatic tools day to day is great, just, for getting day to day, getting by. But like if you really want to unpack the heavy stuff and get to the roots, you need to have a skilled practitioner. That way you don't get into a traumatic memory and get stuck there again and reinforce the trauma. You'll have a guide who can hold space for you and also gently pull you out of something if it gets too activating, because you never want to get too activated in a healing session, right? Because that does the opposite of healing, right? So it's like this interesting dance when you're working somatically and with trauma because you can re-traumatize yourself and there are practitioners and therapists out there that are not trauma trained. Even though people are therapists, that doesn't mean they're trauma trained. I know a lot of people who are not therapists who are more trained with trauma than therapists are. So you just want to like really advocate for yourself, talk to someone, make sure you feel safe with them, that they have a grasp on what trauma is and maybe they've walked that path themselves and, have gotten to the other side. Those are like the best practitioners, in my opinion, or coaches. They've walked through the fire themselves so they can like guide you and they've been there and they can see where you're at and like, oh, okay, go this way.
I'm curious because when my husband started doing the somatic work, it was painful.
Hmm. Yeah.
Even having what you just said,
Mhm.
so
Oh yeah.
that you have someone guide you through it. And I want partners who
Hmm.
of someone who experienced childhood trauma that that their partner is starting this work or is interested in this work. I want to set the expectations for them on how that feels when you start to do that work.
Mm.
How does it feel?
Yeah, so just imagine, you have a bottle of soda or champagne. We can do champagne.
Oh yeah,
And you shake it up.
I love
Shake it,
that.
shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, shake it, right? It wants to pop, right? And as soon as you open that lid, it's like, right? There's a lot in there. That's how trauma is.
That's perfect. I love that
Right?
analogy.
So,
Yes.
yeah, you don't want to do that though, right? So you want to make sure that when you are approaching this, that maybe you get a little soda bottle and you're just like opening it a little bit at a time and letting a little bit of that
Yeah.
um pressure out at a time, right? You don't want to do this and let it pop all over the place. That's like really traumatic. But like if you have like, a little soda bottle and it's shook up too, but like little by little, you're letting out that pressure, right? Versus it just exploding everywhere.
That's
And
great. I love that because I think that some of us, and I may have been one of them, who was really naive about trauma recovery, expecting, oh, in a few
oh yeah,
months
like a
of
magic
doing the
wand.
work,
No, it's
we're
an
going to be in
ongoing
this
thing.
wonderful place. And
Yeah.
uh, and it truly is. You don't want to have the big explosion. That
Yeah.
would be very unhelpful. And
I,
so patience
lots
with
of
the
yeah.
process.
I wish I could give you and everybody and myself like a like magic wand, and just make it all go away. But really it's healing isn't sexy. It's
Yeah.
discipline and it's consistency and it's self-care, lots of self-care, honoring your body, your system, yourself, boundaries, right, as another big part of it. There's really no shortcut, no matter how much somebody tries to tell you there's a shortcut. There is work to be done. And um, that's okay though, because a, a mindset shift you could make around it too is seeing it more like creating a healing lifestyle versus some target you need to hit. Because that's elusive and you're never going to hit whatever that target is. And you might have ideas of what healing is, and that's not even it either. Because I used to think healing is, I'm not going to be triggered anymore, or I'm going to be okay with these type of images or behaviors. And I'm like, nope, I've come to realize like, no, that wasn't healing. Healing means that, yeah, you might get freaking triggered, but you're not going to live there. You're not going to be stuck there for days at a time. You might go there and pop back out. You might be there for 10, 15 minutes, but it's not going to roll over day after day after day, month after month after month, right? Like a doomsday. And then also, you might not be okay with some things ever. And that's okay. And that's boundaries and values, right? So I used to try to change myself or judge myself. And I can bring up one of the boundaries is porn. I can't be with someone who watches porn. I will not be with someone who watches porn, especially because of my traumatic history and what it does to me. And I used to always try to change this about myself or feel like something was wrong with myself for not being okay with it, especially because it kept getting more and more hype and more like it was the thing like everybody's doing or is okay with. And I even have boyfriends telling me like, you need to go work on yourself or you need to go get healed. And I finally had a therapist actually, finally, after my daughter was born, I was like 34 or something. They're like, no, actually, you're allowed to have that boundary. And I was like, what? I'm allowed to have this boundary? I don't have to. And it just did this like clicky thing in my brain. I was like, oh, yeah, healing doesn't mean I have to be okay with something I'm not okay with.
That is so well said. I'm so glad that you brought that up. It's because that is a really nice segue into how your childhood trauma and healing and how that ended up playing out in relationships. And I think that's a topic
that
Mm-hmm.
maybe I haven't addressed that much is the fact that you want to be with someone who loves you and can handle the boundaries
Mm-hmm.
that have occurred because of that trauma without trying to change you. I think there's a difference between, wanting you to grow and heal and get better versus not being able to respect those boundaries for things that you're saying I don't know if I'm ever gonna be able to watch a movie where there's
Sexy.
a
Beauty.
sex scene or where there's torture or
Mhm.
whatever.
So when I had that interview with you for my show, I was just like, oh, I could relate to you so much. And that's why I had those questions too of like, okay, so if one person has trauma, like kind of extreme trauma, that's one thing. But if both people have extreme trauma, that's a whole other ball game. And that's what I've been navigating for 3.5 years now. And
Yes.
that's a whole other dynamic for
And
sure.
you're both triggered because I'm sure he got defensive
Yeah, because I was
because
triggered,
of
triggered
him.
him, and then that
And
triggered
you,
me, and it's like this like loop that we find ourselves in.
yes, this
And I know
terrible
this is
cycle.
common, like a lot of relationships
Very,
go through this, right? And it's torture.
it's very common.
Hmm.
And I think that especially, you haven't, if you're not understanding each other's triggers
Hmm.
is a huge place to start. But it's hard to understand somebody else's triggers when they can't put words
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
to their
Oh
triggers.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that
Yeah.
actually speaks to so when someone's really triggered, we like to do a scale of 0 to 10, like in the clinical view. So 0 means like I don't feel anything. 10 is like, oh my God, this is so much, right? So once someone starts getting to like a 7, 8 to 10, their thinking brain is offline. And because of that, that's why they lose language too. They can't explain what
Yes.
they need or what they want or what's going on. Like they don't have access to that. And they also won't have access to tools unless they have been doing them daily. And so they're part of like their daily routine or whatever, which is why the daily practice is so important with the somatic tools, because it's a different part of your brain.
And one of the things that we did talk when you and I had a conversation, one of the keys is understanding what you just said. And
Hmm.
that is if you're in a relationship with someone
Hmm.
who is triggered,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
and
Oh,
there
this
is
is the hard part. Yeah,
nothing
I think
good is going to come out of a conversation with someone who is triggered
in the moment, yes.
in that moment.
Yeah.
And I think that there has been a lot of stuff out there that says just take a 30-minute break
Hmm.
or work
Yeah.
with your couple on a timeline when you'll come back to it. I would not suggest that for trauma if there's a trauma history. I would say that you need to wait as long as it takes
Hmm.
before you have those follow-up conversations
Yeah, you're right.
when someone is calm.
You're right, because sometimes, like, if I'm super activated, like, so I'm one of those flippy floppy ones. Like, I tend to go more anxious, like, in attachment style. However, if I'm dealing with someone who's been avoidant for a while and it's caused a lot of pain, I will start to flip to the avoidant side. And so there have been times where I'm so activated, I go into super avoidant, like, internal shutdown mode. And yeah, nothing you say or do is gonna like reach me in that state. Just like when he goes to like super avoidant shutdown mode, like there's nothing I could do or say either.
It's
So
like
yeah,
a
those
flip.
kind of tools of
It's
like
like
a
a,
timeout, it's
yeah,
important. Yeah.
no, there is no limit on your timeout. And actually, I think that a lot of times we want to push the conversation because
Yeah,
it'll
we
make
want to
us
for
feel better.
yeah, we want to force the connection back or go into fix it mode.
Right. I do think that is like if I could tell one, a couple who was in that cycle that you
Hmm.
were just describing, that would be the first thing that I would suggest to people
Hmm.
is to really be careful about when you have the conversation and not putting limits on the amount of time that it could take.
Yep.
And I think that a lot of people avoid having follow-up conversations
Oh yeah, they brush it under
after
the
events.
rug because they don't want to return
And
thing.
they
Yeah.
don't, they're, why would I, when things are going better, right? When we're over it and we've moved on, why would I ever rock the boat
Hmm.
and bring
Yep.
it up?
Yeah. So then
And
there's a big pile of unresolved things that haven't been repaired. And what does that create? Resentment.
and then the cycle just
Continue.
continues and gets worse. Oh, well, I have loved this conversation so much because I really do appreciate all the work that you've done, the work that you've done for other people, and you just being so vulnerable about sharing your stories so that maybe other people are starting to hear something about themselves in your story that they couldn't
Mhm.
necessarily put their finger on or identify or put words to. I think you're hoping people do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too. And thank you too for sharing, shedding a light on it because there's a lot of couples struggling and they get embarrassed of like speaking up about it or looking for the help. But you need the help because we aren't given a manual, and most of us don't have great role models for relationship or attachment. And so it's really healthy to get help for individually and then together as a couple. And I love that you also have that model where you coach people to do their individual work and also the couples work together. I think that's the most powerful way to start repatterning and creating a new future and breaking those generational chains.
Yes, and really, really bringing out, I think that the word trigger
Hmm.
and those type of things get thrown out a lot,
Hmm.
but I don't think that people understand them very well, to your
Hmm.
point. And so the more that we can understand about triggers and basically you saying it's not a bad thing that
Mm-mm.
you're
It's getting your
triggered.
button pressed or an
It,
activation in your body.
it's the body's and the brain's response to things, but it isn't the end. It can the reactions can change, those coping mechanisms can be adjusted, and there's no shame
Mm-mm.
in that. And so the more that we can get that word out so that people understand it better, there's less shame associated with it, then we can tackle it head on.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, to me, a trigger, right, is just an activation in the body and it's a messenger or an alarm, right? And it just has information for you, right? But we aren't taught how to get the information out of the trigger, the activation, right? But it's really wanting our attention. And the moment you actually learn through somatic work how to sit with those feelings and get the messages from them, you learn that they just dissipate pretty quickly because all they're really wanting is to be heard, seen, and acknowledged.
Yes, I love
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
That is such a good way to describe how if we all could, you know, start just change our mindset around what a trigger is.
Hmm.
It's actually, a function of our body and personality that is helpful. It's
Yes, it's
just
your
the
best friend.
behavior that
Yes.
occurs
When you
because
don't
of the
listen to it.
trigger.
Yes.
When you don't listen to it and
It
you are
becomes like a
shameful,
tantruming baby.
yes, and you are pushing it deep down,
Yes.
that's that's what when those behaviors that are unhelpful occur.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I absolutely love the work that you are doing. And I want everybody to reach out and hear more about what you are doing on a daily basis. I have one last question for you. What's next for
What's
you?
next for me?
Yeah.
What's next for me? My book is coming out, Into the Light, Becoming My Own Hero. And I think I'm going to be coming with Women's Thrive Summit to the trip in Miami to be with all the ladies because we could do a like a soft book launch party. So I'm really excited for that.
Oh, I am so excited for your book. Okay, well, I am going to put that in all of the show notes so that people can get that, because I think your story is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me. And I love the work you're doing helping couples because it's really hard.
Oh, it is.
It's
Thank
so
you.
hard. Yeah.
Much to Cassandra for sitting down with me this week. And it has just been something that I've thought about a lot. Her story is very inspiring. All of the things that she has been able to overcome. And you can see just from her light in the interview that she really has done the work and come through it. And as with many of my guests, she really wants to share that with the world and help others. So, a couple of key takeaways from this show that I hope that you are able to take from it is that releasing the shame over having had your childhood impact you is something that I'm really hoping that this show can open for people, that it really is okay that some of the techniques that you use to survive your childhood are things that can eventually be changed in relationships in order to make them better. So the second thing is just, I loved how Cassandra was able to talk about how her past did affect her relationships and how she has been able to use a lot of the techniques that she described in her healing process to better be able to manage those emotions and then also be able to communicate them in relationships. And finally, I really am hoping that people got out of this interview that small daily rituals can make a big difference. And it can be big and it can be faster than you think. And so I really am hoping that people who are struggling right now consider making some of those quick shifts in their daily lives, knowing that if you take better care of yourself, that you can be a little bit less responsive to some of the outside things that might be coming your way. So I really hope that people enjoyed this interview and learned a lot. And we would love if you put any questions in the comments, because I know Cassandra and I, that's what we're here for. We want to open the stories, we want to talk more, and we really want to help. So thank you, and I hope to see you next week.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.